I'm trying to hit 100k by the end of the year, and we are so close, guys. It would really just mean so much to me personally if you would subscribe. Now, today, I wanted to read some more Reddit stories, so let's just do that. You guys really seem to love these, and I love reading them for you guys. I love reading your comments and interacting with you guys, so go ahead and join my Discord. Follow my Instagram, both links are in the description. And now, let's get into this first story. I worked the night shift at a grocery store with some disturbing rules. Now, bagging groceries has made me fear for my life. It's crazy what some people will put up with for a little bit of money. Desperate times, I suppose. Well, I am one of those desperate people. Desperation to get my daughter a life-saving medical treatment is what drove me to where I am now. That same desperation has led to daily fear of what might happen next to Danny and I, now that it's over. I had no choice. I needed money right away. I couldn't qualify for a loan, and the damn insurance company said the treatment was not authorized under our policy. My work was barely paying over minimum wage, and I still needed almost 5 grand. The only way this would work is if I got another job working graveyard somewhere else, at least until I could save enough to get her the treatment. Danny was all I had left. I already lost her mother a year ago in that car crash. I couldn't lose her too. I looked high and low. I combed the classifieds and drove around desperately searching for a job that could pay what I needed and have an available night shift as well. The prospect seemed hopeless, but I had to find something soon. The town we lived in was small, and the prospects all seemed bleak. That was when, in a streak of what felt like luck at the time, I inquired about a job at a small grocery store about a mile away from where we live. It was called She's Nighttime Convenience and Grocery. It was an odd little store that was closed during the day and seemed to open at around 8 p.m. and close sometime before morning. The weird hours seemed off, and I didn't know who would want to shop at a store that was only open in the middle of the night when there were 24-hour chains elsewhere. Though it did not really matter. It was a store, I needed a job, and the unique hours in this case would work for the schedule I needed. I decided to try and apply for a job there. I was on my way home after finishing a shift at my day job. My friend Kathy was nice enough to watch Danny while I was working, and had even agreed to do so if I found a graveyard shift somewhere else as well, at least for a month or two if needed. Since I had seen the odd shop and saw the hours, I decided to inquire about a job at the lonesome and odd little store that seemed to be only open at night. I was reluctant at first, since I thought that they might have some illicit reasons to only be open at such hours. Despite my misgivings, I realized it was the best hope I had of getting a job with my minimal skill set, and that was a guaranteed graveyard shift. I got out of my car and walked up to the entrance. The place was pretty run down, but seemed to still have signage up and around the front. There were sale signs and clearance items advertised, and the somewhat normal facade of a grocery store made me relax and continue with my intended course. I noticed up close there was a mark under the first part of the store's name, She's. It looked like a Japanese kanji or something. I stepped inside, and it seemed deceptively large compared to how small it was on the outside. There were aisles of various groceries and other household supplies, and even some clothes racks. I had no idea how it was this large in operation. Most of the shoppers seemed fairly normal at first, though there were some people who you could tell preferred to do their shopping at night. I tried not to stare as I received a rather murderous-looking glare from one such individual who I must have let my eyes linger on too long. The staff also seemed about the same as any other store staff would look. Fairly diverse, and no one with an overly cheery or overly sullen mood about them. I did notice there was not a lot of talking near the checkouts. Moving on, I looked near the front, intent on finding a manager's office to inquire at. I felt hopeful when I saw a sign that I thought read "Help Wanted." I felt a bit confused and less optimistic when I read the full content of the rather strange sign, stating "Help Wanted, but not always needed." I was not sure how to take that, so I decided to look for someone to ask. As I approached the back office and went to knock on the door, I was interrupted by a large man with a blue store apron and a name badge indicating he was Store Manager Benny. The large man welcomed me with a pleasant, though slightly forced, "Hello, can I help you find something today?" I was distracted by the almost pained expression on his face, like his smile would eventually shatter the muscles in his face if he kept it on for a moment longer. Brushing past the distraction, I remembered why I was there. Yes, I was actually looking to apply for a job here. I stated my earnest interest while gesturing to the help sign near the door. Benny stopped smiling and looked at the sign, and then looked as if he was about to say something when he held up a finger and pulled out a radio from his pocket. Molly, what is the bagger situation today? How are we holding up staff-wise? There was no immediate response. He smiled again in that disturbing way while he drummed his fingers along his tie as he awaited a response. His face wrinkled and he stated, I am sorry, I think we might be full at the moment, but thanks for your interest. He was about to usher me away when his radio barked to life, and I heard a static, laden voice on the line. I couldn't hear everything, but it sounded strange, and I thought I heard something like, Rob caught problem and got bagged. I didn't know what to make of the weird bits I heard, but before I could think twice about it, I heard Benny mumble. Alright, but next time answer faster. It could have been a code black, and if you mess around with those customers, it is your ass next. I was still standing there in awkward silence when he wheeled around and his frustrated veneer vanished and he was back to the awful fake smile, as he loudly proclaimed, Congratulations, there is an opening available now. Let's get you set up. Can you start tonight? Right now, as in tonight? I asked, thoroughly surprised that they would want me to start immediately and without any application or vetting process to speak of. Yes, right now. Don't worry, we can sort out all the legal stuff later, but for tonight, we are actually a bit busier than normal and we could use the help. First, though, let's talk terms and some mandatory paperwork. I was not sure what he meant, but I figured it might mean a salary negotiation. Sure, what is the pay and benefits? I knew it was a little tacky to ask up front, but I needed that money badly, and Danny couldn't afford for me to get taken for a ride by someone lowballing my wages. $45 an hour is the pay for backers, which is what we normally start people as. I almost gasped aloud. That was crazy for a grocery store bag boy. My surprise was apparent, and Benny held up a hand and cut off my next question, stating, We value hard work and integrity here, and just a wee bit of discretion. He laughed aloud and slapped his knee. But in all seriousness, there is a non-disclosure agreement we do need you to sign with the paperwork. He grinned again, and I thought the discretion bit and the NDA was weird, but that was double what I was making in my day job, so I was overjoyed at the prospect. He then continued, Health coverage and dental are fully covered, but no life insurance. Those policies always have some trouble for some reason. His grin widened as he said the last part, and it looked even more fake than before. Despite some disturbing implications, I could scarcely hear the alarm bells in my head over my future payday. I had found a miracle. I would be able to get enough money in about a month working here and my day job. I would be able to get Danny that treatment. I didn't need to be asked twice. I readily agreed to the offer. Very good decision. Welcome to the Sheaf family. Ed, get out here and get our new hire an apron and a tag and start with a simple version of the bagger training. An unpleasant-looking older man emerged from the back room and was holding an apron and moving with an odd gait that might have indicated some previous injury or the like. I forced a smile and introduced myself, but the man, Ed as I heard his name was, did not reciprocate. He looked me up and down and snorted derisively in a way that was hard not to take offense to. I let it go and waited for him to say something. Just before opening my mouth to ask when the training started, he cut me off and humorlessly asked, You know baggin', feller? Baggin'? Like bagging groceries? I tried to clarify. He glared at me and just nodded his head. Well, yeah, I mean, I have a general idea. I never worked at a grocery store before, but I think I know how things should be bagged, generally speaking. He paused an uncomfortably long time, and I was about to try and speak again when he snorted and gave a rather unpleasant, throaty laugh that ended in a dry coughing fit. As he finished, he said, Not like this, I'm guessing you don't. All right then, come on. I will show you how we do the bagging and also the other rules. Reckon you better listen close. I ain't for repeating myself. I nodded my head and we started towards the back room when I heard the radio on his belt come to life and a very nervous-sounding voice on the other line say, Code Black. Repeat, Code Black. Ed's face wrinkled in a way that somehow made him look even more annoyed than usual. God damn it all, more than fellers already. He turned and left, angrily shouting some imperceptible grunts and complaints into the walkie and left me near the back room, dumbstruck and not sure what to do next. What was a Code Black? Why was everyone so afraid of them? I was about to go look for someone when I felt a hand on my shoulder and I wheeled around to see a woman. The tag on her shirt read Assistant Manager Molly. She smiled at me and it did seem more genuine than some of the others here. I'm sorry, we've not met. You must be the new hire. I'm Molly, the AM here. I can help you with the training and orientation. You can be a great asset here at She's. She held a hand towards the backroom doors and ushered me towards them. We moved into the backroom halls, and as I looked around, I saw several doors that looked like ice boxes. I figured they must store a lot of products and need that many freezers scattered about. Visible near the freezer's doors were shelves of other inventory. There were rows of boxes and pallets of strange things like chemicals, metalworking gear, various pieces of hardware, and crates that had gun manufacturers' names on them. I was wondering again just what kind of store this really was. Beside the odd inventory, it was also kind of a mess, and I was glad I wouldn't be the one having to sort all of it. We made our way to an office room with oppressively bright blue painted walls like a kindergarten classroom. The site reminded me of when Danny was in kindergarten, and I steeled my resolve against any difficulty this job might have. I needed to do this for her. The office was sparse. There was only a desk, some chairs, and a file cabinet. I did notice on the walls, painted on the bright blue, were some black characters that almost looked like calligraphy. More of those kanji were on the wall, and again, I wondered what they meant. Before I could guess, Molly was motioning to me. She gestured for me to sit down at one of the only two chairs, in this case, the one facing the desk. I sat down, and she sat opposite me. She looked over a few pieces of paper she had on a clipboard, and then smiled, turned around, and started rummaging through a file cabinet. As I was waiting, a sudden shriek was heard outside, and I looked to the door and suppressed a gasp. Molly didn't react and kept looking for something. I thought maybe she hadn't heard it, and I was about to say something when she wheeled around with a large binder in hand and dropped it onto the desk with a loud crash. Before training starts, please fill out this form for your safety and ours. She handed me a piece of paper that, when reading the details, seemed to be the non-disclosure agreement Benny had mentioned. I thought it odd I had to sign this, but other hiring documents like tax, payroll, and healthcare paperwork were not required before starting. I considered they might be paying people under the table, which I hated to admit I might prefer since no tax deduction meant I could save money faster. I signed all too quickly without realizing what I was agreeing to keep quiet and what the consequences were if I didn't. Molly took the paper, looked it over, and said, "Good, that is settled. Well, let's get started. This is the employee handbook. We only have one, so you were going to be doing some light reading for a bit. Because we need the manpower now, though, I will go through it with you quickly since Ed was indisposed." She grimaced when she said the last word and looked at her watch and then adjusted a dial in her walkie-talkie. She looked back at me and resumed. "As a bagger, you are vital in ensuring customers leave satisfied with their product, and you are one of the last people they will see on the way out. Except in certain circumstances." She cleared her throat loudly in time to some muffled noise I thought I heard somewhere else in the back room. Basic rules and a code of conduct are as follows. You are to bag products to the customer's satisfaction. The first thing you are to ask customers is what type of bags they want. Whatever they say goes as far as how to bag things and with what bags. You are not to ask about or discuss the purchases of the customers no matter how curious you are or how talkative they might be. No questions, period. Understood? She slammed her fist in the binder and I jumped back, startled as she looked at me. I stammered out a quick acknowledgement. Yes, understood." "Good," she said, and continued with her list. "No assistance may be provided to customers for loading or unloading things from their vehicles. If a customer requests help with their vehicle, do not, under any circumstances, assist or leave the building with them or any customer at any time. Regardless of the story they give you as to why they need help. It is our policy and they know this. If requests persist or you are feeling intimidated or threatened, you are to press the yellow button at the end of each checkout at the bagging station. A security person will escort the offending customer to aisle 4 for processing and detainment." Wait, detainment? They don't just kick them out? I thought that was weird. She continued with the next rule before I could ask about it. "The most important rule, occasionally there will be a special bag request. You will know it when you hear it. If ordered, press the black button by the end of the checkout and proceed with code BLACK protocol. These guests are normally our highest paying customers and often are here at the pleasure of Mr. Shi himself. They must be attended as quickly as possible." And there it was. Code BLACK again. What special bag was she talking about? Ignoring the look of concern spreading over my face, she continued. "Cell phones, smartwatches, or quite literally anything that could be used as a recording device are strictly prohibited while on duty. both for our customers' sake and for our own. Store closes at 4 a.m. exactly. Any customers who remain will be escorted out, only exception being any customers who are involved in a code black. No access is allowed to the basement and inventory backrooms, only managers and stock employees allowed. Simple, right? Any questions? She asked, while flashing another smile. Well, I did have a few questions about the... She cut me off mid-sentence, talking over me and saying, "Good, I knew you were a fast learner. Come on, let's get you out of the check stands and bagging." She grabbed my shoulder surprisingly hard and pulled me out of the office and back into the store proper. I saw a few customers look at me getting pulled along, and I saw some snickers, and I felt a bit embarrassed. I was led to a checkout with the flickering number 3 next to it. The other 2 were busy with customers waiting in line to be helped by a cashier and bagger a few feet away from where I would be standing. We stopped, and Molly cleared her throat loudly to get the attention of a young man with dirty blonde hair and a rather unimpressed expression on his face. "Hello, Lee. This is our new bagger. Show him the ropes and try to be easy on him. It's his first day. I know it's busy, but we don't need another Rob situation so soon. Have fun, you two." She walked away without another word to the back room, and I was left there with Lee, as I heard his name was, staring at me. I tried to break the ice. "Hi, my name is..." "Save it," he responded abruptly. "I don't want to get attached just in case. I liked Rob, he was my friend, and now it's best not to talk about what happened to him. Just do your job and follow the rules, and you should be fine." I didn't know how to respond to the blunt introduction, but I figured he seemed nicer than that Ed guy, so I just walked up to the backing station and gave him a mock salute and tried to put a smile on my face. It was going to be a long night. The first customer came through and Lee wordlessly scanned their items. I proceeded to grab a few nearby bags when I felt a sharp kick in my leg. Lee was glaring at me like I had just slapped his mother. "What? I thought I was supposed to..." Then I looked at the customer who was frowning at me, and I remembered. "Hello, what type of bag would you like?" The customer, an older woman, sneered at me and finally accepted the question and said flatly, "Paper, please," and did her best to pretend I didn't exist while I was bagging her items. Mostly groceries, produce, meat, and dairy. There were a few odd pieces, like a set of kitchen knives and what looked like boxes of some sort of firearm ammunition. I was about to ask about them when I remembered the rules. I tried to ignore it and just carry on. She left wordlessly, and more customers piled into our line. As the night went on, I started to see less normal items and more disturbing things. One customer had brought zip ties, large volumes of what looked like medical-grade sedatives, and several bags of candy. Another bought an ungodly amount of various weapons, ammunition, and several large fruits like watermelon and honeydew. I thought he might be just shooting some fruit for target practice until I saw what appeared to be a Kevlar vest and an uncomfortable amount of alcohol. After a dozen very disturbing customers came through, I finally found someone who seemed a bit friendly. She was a kindly old woman who seemed to enjoy speaking to me and, by all accounts, was very nice. It was a much-needed reprieve, and I actually enjoyed talking with her. Her name was Marge, and she was just buying some baking supplies, eggs, butter, flour, spices, all pretty normal things. "You simply must try my raspberry tart. It is divine. I will bring some by next time, or better yet, I think I still have some in my car. Won't you be a doll and help an old woman with her groceries?" I was about to accept when I saw Lee's face go blank as he just shook his head. I looked back at Marge, and she had a wide grin on her face, and I looked down at the second half of her groceries yet to be bagged. There were containers of various chemicals, including rat poison, bleach, and ammonia. I tried to speak, but I froze, and she asked again. "Come on, dearie, my hip is in bad shape after my fall. It will only be a moment, and you can have a treat and a nice tip as well." Her grin shifted in a way that made me very uncomfortable, and I struggled to speak, but finally blurted out, "No thank you, ma'am. Store policy. We are not to escort customers out of the store under any conditions." Her grin vanished, and a grimace of anger flared up briefly. "Oh well, your loss, I suppose. I would have made it spectacular. I thought I might get one of the new ones before you figured it out. Next time, Sonny, I might just find where you live and make a house call." She winked at me and pushed her cart away, and I was shocked and horrified at the implications of what had just happened. Lee elbowed me in the side and gestured to the customer who had taken her place, and I was forced to just ignore another uncomfortable encounter that night. After a long shift of bagging goods for an assortment of disturbing individuals, I realized my work was done when a screeching PA system informed everyone in the store that It is now 4 a.m. and we are closing. If you have not purchased your items already, then you must leave. If you are loading goods, a reminder that no employees may leave with you. You must take them and leave. If you do not, they will be confiscated. Any customers lingering in store will be confiscated as well. Jeez, they were not joking about that strict closing time. A large group of people I had not seen before moved through the aisles with flashlights and batons. They must have been the store security team. They seemed overkill and intense, more like paramilitary than grocery store security guards. They were looking for any stragglers, apparently. I thought just then of the weird announcement about people left behind being confiscated as well, and it seemed kind of concerning with how serious they were about everyone getting the hell out on time. I was ushered out as well, along with the other staff who left wordlessly. I tried to make a quip to Lee asking if there was ever overtime, but he just kept his head down and ignored my joke. I did not know what kind of operation this was, but the more I learned about it, the more I felt like I made a mistake in taking the job. I had to keep it for a while longer, at least until I could save enough for Danny's treatment. I worked at She's for a few more weeks of uncomfortable conversations and ghoulish and unspeakable items being bagged at the caprice of disturbing and malign customers. I saw 2 code blacks in that time, at least I should say I overheard them. Lee told me not to look and try to avoid the attention of the customers who ordered them. After the first one in my second week of work, I did not see Jay, the other bag boy, again. Lee warned me not to ask about him, and I was getting increasingly terrified of what would happen if I got one as well. What the hell were code blacks? The only good news I had was that the store paid bi-weekly, and to my surprise, it seemed like almost no taxes were taken out of my paycheck. I had almost a full $2,800 from the first 2 weeks of work. A little more, and with a bit of the money I saved up from my other job, I could afford Danny's treatment. I just needed to make it 2 more weeks, and then I could quit and never see the awful place again. I managed to avoid any trouble my 3rd week, but in my last week I had a disastrous run-in with a customer. It was what started a sequence of events so horrible that the conclusion still threatens my family's safety and terrifies me to this day. It was about 11 p.m. and things were going okay. Some of the managers were poking around and there was an odd air of concern and anticipation in the air. Lee told me that the owner would be stopping by at some point that night, Mr. She himself. I was trying to ask more about the owner when a large bald man came to our checkout. He had horn-rimmed glasses and a large, jowly face that was fixed in a leering stare that made me feel very uncomfortable. He tried to chat with me, but I got very bad vibes from the man. I tried to ignore him, but he kept pressing it. Come on, man, lighten up. I see you're new here. What's it like working here? You see any real action?" My response was simply asking, "What type of bag would you like, sir?" "I will show you my bag if you show me yours," he said. Then he let out a belly laugh that almost knocked his glasses off as he kept smiling at me with a sick gleam in his eyes. After a moment, he finally said, "Plastic's fine, I guess. Just trying to lighten the mood. You look tense, like you could use a break." I ignored him while bagging copious amounts of junk food, a pair of pliers, lube, condoms, and various chemicals like bleach and OxyClean. I'd become slightly inured to the worst of the colorful characters and the concerning wares they purchased, but this one seemed particularly loathsome. "Yeah, you could definitely use a break. Hey, I know, I can give you a little pick-me-up in my car. I'm right outside. Help me take this stuff out and I'm your Huckleberry." I couldn't even formulate a response. I couldn't think over my skin crawling away to another zip code. I resolved just to fall back on the rulebook line and proceeded to inform him that we are not allowed to leave the store with customers for any reason. To my horror and disgust, this one did not let the matter go. Come on, you're just playing hard to get. Seriously, I'm sure I can pay you more than these people. Come on, what do you say? Come on out and we'll talk about it." I repeated the rules again while bagging the last of his items, but he would not let it go. "Hey, listen to me, you think you're too good for me? You think you're some kind of hot shit? Well, you're coming outside now. No one ignores me like this. I have a special treat in store for stubborn pricks who don't listen to me." His face was bright red and he was practically spitting the words at me. I panicked at first, but then I remembered the button by the bagging station. I pressed it discreetly while trying to hold my ground, shrinking slightly back to the vile tirade of the deranged individual. I took a step back, and he moved forward, looking like he was going to grab me. To my surprise, a large, gloved hand fell on his shoulder. I looked behind him, and a nearly 7-foot-tall man clad in a weird cross between police riot gear and military-grade armor was holding him back. The customer turned around and started to yell at security. Do you pricks know who I am? I know the owner. You will all be sorry you crossed me. I'm going to. And a sickening crunch was heard, followed by the man going limp. The guard holstered a now bloodied security baton and bent down over the dazed form of the customer. His eyes were glazed and likely he had a concussion, but he was still conscious and tried to speak when the security guard seized him by the throat and hoisted him back to his feet. The customer tried to whimper out a soft and confused sounding, wait, before he was punched so hard in the chest I thought I heard his ribs break from where I was standing. The helmeted face of the guard turned to me, looked me up and down, and asked, what type of bag was he using? I had no idea what that had to do with anything, but I answered, plastic. He was using plastic bags. I heard a chuckle under the mask and helmet of the guard, and he said, too bad he didn't pick paper. And the guard dumped out one of the man's bags. As he was trying to rise to his feet, the guard placed the plastic bag around the customer's head and tightened it. To my shock and horror, he proceeded to strangle him. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and after a few moments it was over. I was speechless, and another guard came over and they took the customer's body on a stretcher to the back room. Benny, the store manager, had appeared out of nowhere and spoke to us. I'm sorry you had to see that, but I'm glad you're safe. We take threats very seriously here and know you all need to be safe in such dangerous times. That is why we keep this place safe. Safe from dangerous people like that. I trust what happened here will also be safe and secure with you, right? After all, we wouldn't want you endangered by anyone like that, knowing where you live, right? He smiled at us and left the back rooms. I understood the veiled threat, and I realized I would not be able to tell any real authorities or report on this madhouse. Despite that encounter, my night was not done yet, and the worst was yet to come. Lee would not speak to me about what we both saw, and we tried to move on with the night and pretend what we saw happen didn't happen. It was getting close to 4 a.m. and we would be able to close soon. I was so close to being done with this place and getting out of there and home to my little girl. I just needed to hang on for a couple more days. There were only a few more customers lining up at the checkouts when something odd happened. A well-dressed man went to checkout number 2 and they shut off their light and said the scanner was not working anymore. It seemed fishy since it had been fine all night, but when the guarded looks and concerned faces flashed before me and then back of the well-dressed man, I realized that they might know something I didn't. My heart sank as I realized he might be one of those special customers. I looked over at Lee and he was visibly sweating and fumbling with the cash register. The man sauntered over to our checkout. He had a small basket with what looked like fine sewing thread, thimbles, and tailoring articles. It also contained a hacksaw, a plaster cast, and several boxes of nails and rivets that seemed to clash with the sewing equipment. By itself, I did not think anything of it, and I relaxed a bit. Lee was pale and wordlessly scanned the small items he had. After they came down the conveyor, the man turned to me, tipped his hat, and introduced himself. Good evening, my friend. My name is Henry Jaspin. I work for a little antique clothes shop, and I'm here to get some materials. I relaxed a bit more. This didn't seem too strange. I proceeded to ask, what type of bags would you like today, Mr. Jaspin? Well, my good fellow, I should think paper for the small bits you see here. Indeed, I found all the tailoring kit I need to make work anyone would be proud of. But what I really need today are some raw materials. So the bag I really need will be a body bag tonight, preferably the larger variety. My mind was racing. My heart was pounding. Did he just say he needed a body bag? I was about to ask him to repeat it when it dawned on me. The rules had said, a special bag request, you will know it when you hear it. I realized I had just encountered my first code black. I forced my trembling body to move and I pressed the black button under the bagging station. I heard an alert on nearby walkie-talkies. Code black on number 3. Confirmations were heard all around. There was a burst of motion near the back, and I handed Mr. Jaspin his bag of smaller merchandise as Benny approached us. Good evening, Mr. Jaspin. He managed to choke out the words, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. Oh, Benny, don't worry. I know what I asked for, and though you are a big fella, I wouldn't dream of picking you. We go too far back. Besides, your skin is terrible. Can you imagine one of our suits on you? Mr. Jaspin let out a howl of laughter, and Benny followed suit with a nervous chuckle of his own. Your new employee, however, he has a nice strong jaw and broad shoulders. Not as much meat, though. He looked me over, and I was confused and terrified at the implication of whatever it was he was talking about. As he was eyeing me, Benny spoke up, saying, Of course, you are free to pick as you please, but if I could suggest an option. We just picked up a rather unruly fellow who was processed a few hours ago, and he is on the larger side. Perhaps he would be a good alternative. Of course, Benny, you and your new hire lead the way. I followed Benny, and between him and Mr. Jaspin, who was behind us. We went into the back, and then through a keycard-locked door that led into the basement. Benny shot me an apologetic look as we descended into the basement, and I beheld what was down there for the first time. The place was very dark and freezing. I thought it might be another type of meat locker, and I was not too far off. When the light switched on, I had to stifle a gasp of shock and horror. As soon as the room was illuminated, I saw it all. We were surrounded on all sides by rows and rows of body bags. Almost all of them were full, corpses leered out of many of them, all in various states of decomposition. I thought I was going to be sick. It looked like a morgue. I realized that we'd been dealing with these products the whole time. I laughed quietly to myself in despair when I realized the options were paper, plastic, and apparently body bags. I thought of the conversation of selecting a person. I also thought of the other people who had handled Code Blacks and had not been seen again, like Rob. Rob was bagged. I stood there, mouth agape, trembling at the horror of the nightmare room before me. While it all unfolded in stark terror to me, Mr. Jaspin calmly perused through the inventory of corpses. He would scrutinize them, pinching a cheek here and there and giving a tut-tut or moan of disdain. He came across the body Benny had pointed out, and he said, My, he is a big fellow. A lot of material they would love to use. Skin is a little dry in places, a touch of eczema. That is alright though, Benny old chum. You have a deal. I will tell Mr. Shi. Benny sighed in relief and started to guide me out of that nightmarish dungeon. While leaving, I caught a look at Mr. Jaspin's pick and I held my hand over my mouth to avoid gasping out loud. It was the belligerent customer from earlier. A large dent on his face from where it was smashed in by security. The face had a deathly pallor and his eyes were still leering even in death. Why in the hell was he down here in a body bag, and why does it sound like he was just purchased? My mind was grasping for rationalizations for how and why this was all happening. Suddenly, Mr. Jaspin caught my hand and proceeded to place a card into my palm. As for you, my fine friend, we would love to have a worker like you at our establishment. She runs a tight ship here, but we are a bit more free-spirited at the tailor. Take care. And he departed with his horrific purchase. I was ushered upstairs in a daze and I vaguely heard Benny talking with someone. I snapped back to my senses and saw a new face looking at me. He was an older man and he had very intense, unblinking eyes that were boring into my soul as I stood there. He spoke to me in a stern but oddly soothing voice. I know you might be unsettled by what you just saw, but she knew, and the means to access it are natural parts of life. It is what you saw. It is what we sell. We sell it in all forms. Why, it is even in our name. I hope you understand and do not consider anything foolish over the next few days. We value your work, but understand that some people lack the fortitude to deal with what our business does. Just don't forget that when you head back home to your house on 4th Avenue. The large cherry tree at the end of the street is blossoming and looks beautiful. You should take your daughter to see while it still blooms. He placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed while departing. I had no idea what I had just witnessed, but I knew I was in trouble. My mind was a jumble, and besides the imminent threat, I found myself considering something unrelated, a name. I thought about what Mr. Shi had said about She Knew and how we sell it. I looked again at the sign as I was leaving, She's Nighttime Convenience and Grocery. I did not think anything of it at first, but I looked closer at the kanji by the first word. Looking up the meaning on my phone, I saw that it was indeed the kanji for she, sometimes used when counting as the number 4 in Japanese, but more often associated with something else. The dawning horror and simplicity of the name made sense now. She more often translates to death. I had worked for almost an entire month at Death's Nighttime Convenience and Grocery. I did not go back, I quit. I will find another way to make the rest of the money I need. My family's safety is what's important now, and I know it's not safe for me and Danny here anymore. How could it be, when Mr. Death knows where we live? My friends and I cannot stop playing a board game. It ruined our lives. I can barely remember what life was like before we found the game that June night. We were 6 high school kids bored out of our minds, trying our best to fill the void. Most of us had part-time summer jobs, but we were hesitant to spend that money on anything. We all hoped to save for college. After what felt like hours going back and forth on deciding what to do for the day, we took a walk around our suburban neighborhood. It was the end of a yard sale day, and most people were packing up and heading inside. A few people still remained outside, eager to sell. We didn't really have the intention to buy anything, but I still combed through the last pieces of used crap people set out. I always think I'm gonna find some kind of amazing treasure, but always end up questioning my purchases hours later. I found myself digging through a shoebox full of old board games. I thought I might be able to find a new game for all of us to play. I also figured since it was the end of the day, I might get it for super cheap. At first, I only saw games that looked in too bad of shape to even play. That, or it was a game I knew my friends wouldn't want to play. I've always been a fan of board games, but not so much for my friends. I had to beg them for months to play D&D with me, and they were only willing to play it for my birthday. I'm always trying to find new games that might interest them. I was ready to give up, but then I saw a game at the bottom that I'd never heard of. Tasks with Friends, with the tagline, "The game you and your friends will never want to put down." The box looked colorful and pretty worn out, but not so bad that we couldn't play with it. It just looked well loved. I tried to open it up, but the sides were taped down. I mean, it makes sense. You don't want all the pieces to come flying out after all. I didn't see a price tag or sign for the price, so I found the owner and asked her, "Excuse me, how much are you selling this game for?" I said eagerly to the woman while admiring the bright-colored box that lacked any company branding or trademarking. "Oh, that old thing? I don't know, do you have $1 on you?" the woman said as she put the yard sale leftovers into one big box. As she told me the price, I perked up and started to dig through my purse. She either got annoyed with me taking too long or just wanted to be nice and told me to just take it. She immediately started to back up her box again. "So, is the game any fun?" I said to her awkwardly. "I actually never played it. My friend Jen gave it to me a few years back because her kids got obsessed over it or something, so she just wanted to get rid of it. She thought my family would enjoy it, but we just never got around to playing it," she said with her back facing me. I kindly thanked her and called for my friends to come over and see what I got. As I called for them, I could see their curiosity over what I had found. That excitement was quickly lost when they saw I had a board game in my hands. They rolled their eyes knowing that I would try and get them to play it with me. "Kate, you know we don't do the board game thing," Aaron said to me, annoyed. "Come on, guys. You've all been going on and on all day about how bored you are. At least try. This game looks really fun. I actually haven't played this one before, so we can all learn together," I said as I saw their faces start to grow curious again. James came up to me and gestured at the box in my hand. I gave it over to him, hoping that he would be convinced to play after looking at it. I knew if he was down to play, everyone else would be too. As he held the box, I could see the expression on his face change from doubt to excitement. "Damn, this game looks like fun. Let's go play," he said with a giddy tone I'd never heard him use. He started to jog in the direction of his house, with me close behind and the rest of our friends slowly walking behind me, looking confused as to why James was so excited to play a board game when he was normally the person most against them. We all made it back to James's house. We walked in and were greeted by his mom, confused as to what made her emotionless son so excited. As we stood in the entryway, not sure what to say, we heard him calling us from the basement. We ran down the steps to see the game fully set up on the floor and ready to play. He was sitting on a pillow reading the instructions with intense concentration. "James, are we actually playing this game?" Bree whined. "Yes, we are. I promise. If you just sit down and start to play, you will have fun. I had a chance to learn the rules while you guys got here," James insisted as he shuffled a pile of cards one last time. After a few minutes of back and forth, everyone was sitting down and ready to play. James explained the rules of the game directly from the intrusion manual. Each player starts with their token at the start of the board. Players will take turns drawing a card from the top of the deck. Each card will have a task. If that task is completed, you may move the number of spaces that are specified on the card. Once you see the card, it will say secret or public at the top. If it's a secret card, don't read it out loud. This task must be completed without anyone noticing or questioning the action on the card. For example, hold someone's hand, sing a song, insult someone, etc. Just complete the task without anyone calling you out. If a player does something you believe to be a secret task, say out loud, "Deceiver." If the player was caught, they will show their card and fail their task. Do not move any pieces. If the person who calls out Deceiver wrongly accuses the player, then they must move back one space. The accused player will keep that card and continue to try and complete the task. Once you have successfully completed a secret task, you may announce task complete and move your token forward as many spaces as specified on your task card. If you pull a public card, you must read it aloud. These cards will include things like saying the alphabet backwards, don't say or your next turn, singing a karaoke song, playing dead for 1 minute, etc. Some cards have time limits and specific instructions. Every card will clearly state the task. The person who gets their token to the end of the board wins. The game will start with the player who lied last drawing a card. Take turns drawing one card at a time with the person to your right going next. Have fun. James folded the paper instructions up and sat them by his side, asking if anyone had questions. No one said anything. It seemed like they all understood the game fine, or maybe they just didn't care yet. "Alright, let's get the game started," James proclaimed, but was met with blank stares. "Come on guys, I just read the rules. You should know how the game starts. We have to start with who lied last." Everyone remained silent. No one wanted to say their last lie. "This is so dumb. I guess I'll go. I told my mom that Henry wasn't hanging out with us when I left the house. There, I'll go first." Bree blurted out as she leaned forward to grab a card. As she looked at it, she rolled her eyes. "This is so dumb. Why are we playing this game?" "Come on, Bree, it can't be that bad. Can you read it out loud?" Henry said, sensing that the card was embarrassing. "Ugh, public card. Pretend to be a cow for 3 minutes." She threw the card down and looked at Henry, who was to her right, expecting her turn to just be over and not wanting to even try. The rest of the group started to laugh and encourage her, chanting her name and begging her to do it. After about a minute, she gave in and got down on her hands and knees. When she first started, she was annoyed, staring daggers at Henry. As her time ran down, I could see in her face her feeling towards the game change. When the timer went off, she didn't stop for a few seconds. She kept going because she was laughing so hard. "That was so fun. Someone moved my token up 1 space. Henry, it's your turn now," Bree said with a giggle and a newfound excitement. Henry looked at her in disbelief. He was so used to her cold exterior, but liked that this game made it melt away. Henry picked up his card. He motioned, zipping his lips shut, and shook his head. Me, Bree, and James all squealed in excitement, with the rest of the group looking lost, not understanding what they missed that got us so excited. Since Henry had a secret card, it was AJ's turn. She was chuckling along, but clearly just doing it because she didn't want to look dumb for asking us what was so funny. She pulled her card and read it out loud. It's a public card," she said with a dry tone, trying to gauge the room and observe everyone else as they celebrated her public card. "It says I have to do jumping jacks until my next turn." As she stood up, everyone in the room cheered her on, except Aaron. As she got to her feet, she paused and looked over at Aaron. I can imagine he felt like the only sane person in the room and wasn't sure what was going on. After a second of hesitation, she started her jumping jacks. Aaron looked around at us, eyeing him down, desperately waiting for him to read his card. By the time he finally picked up his card, AJ started to laugh while doing her jumping jacks. "Sorry, it's a secret card," Aaron said nervously, as everyone wiggled with happiness. "Well, looks like it's my turn," I said as I leaned forward but was cut off by Henry quickly standing to his feet and lunging towards AJ, tackling her to the ground, interrupting her jumping jacks and making a loud thump as they hit the ground. "Henry, what the hell are you doing? What's wrong with you?" Aaron yelled in a serious tone that turned into him trying not to laugh by the end of the sentence. "I'm calling a deceiver on that tackle, Henry," Bree stated with a laugh. Okay, you got me," Henry said while still laying on AJ from his tackle. They both smiled over the event, even though it clearly hurt when they hit the floor. "But you have to admit, that one was tricky." I tried to start my turn again, but was interrupted by Aaron. "Ha! Task completed." I yelled at Henry and didn't get caught. "I get to move 2 spaces," he said as he smugly moved his token 2 spaces on the game board. We kept playing the game for hours. We finished the first game and everyone wanted to play again, and again, and again. I looked around them in disbelief. It felt impossible that all my friends were enjoying a board game. It was a dream come true. After years of begging, finally, normally at hangouts like this by 10 p.m., Bree and Henry would wander off to make out in some closet, AJ goes home to sleep, and Aaron, James, and I are left to just awkwardly try and find something to do with just the 3 of us. It got to be 2 a.m. and we were either exhausted or our parents calling us, telling us to come home or we would be in serious trouble. We all went back to our houses, but all had a hard time going to sleep. We stayed up until 5 a.m. for some of us, just talking about the game over text. Strategies, when we could play again, funny things that happened that night. We couldn't get enough. The games we played started out pretty simple, no tasks got too wild, and while we really loved to play, it wasn't like it was taking over our whole lives. Not yet, at least. Because we played the game at James's house the first time, we ended up just keeping it there. Even though the game was technically mine, we always hung out at his place, so it just made sense. It was around 10 a.m. the next day when our group chat started to blow up with everyone asking when we could get together that day. Now, because it was summertime and we were all teenagers, we either had work in the mornings or most of us slept until noon, but not me. I was always up early waiting for my friends to get up so I had something to do. We're trying to make some money as a dog walker. That being said, I was shocked when I saw that everyone was up and everyone claimed to not have work. James didn't have a job at that point, so of course he was free, but everyone else was too. That didn't happen often. We all met up at James's place at around 11 a.m. that same day, everyone eager to play. We must have played 10 games that day. The games consisted of us doing accents, being banned from saying certain words, backflips, and so on. Nothing too weird. We realized after a few games that we never got a repeating card, not one time. This was strange because there were probably 200 cards in the deck, but even with us playing a dozen games, every card was new. I knew I had a couple of dogs to walk that evening, but texted the owners to cancel. No way was I gonna leave while all my friends were enjoying a board game this much. I knew AJ said something about her having a shift at 4 p.m., but when the time got close, she went to the other side of the room and called out of work. She didn't even mention it to us or talk about it. She just stood up, walked to the corner, talked to her manager, and came back. No one thought anything of it. After a few minutes, she loudly proclaimed task completed, moving her token up 3 spaces. We looked around confused at what tasks she had, and the card said call out sick to work. We were surprised by this card, to say the least. It was the first time a card had to do with something outside of the players. Everyone else in the group canceled any plans that they had for the rest of the day, although AJ was the only person who completed a task for it. It was around 11 p.m., which made it a full 12 hours of the game. Bree pointed out that we forgot to eat any food that day. After thinking about it, I realized that I hardly drank any water and went to the bathroom like 1 time all day. Things started to get out of hand that night. AJ pulled a card that said to go into a closet with the player to the left and kiss them for 5 minutes. Of course, that player was Henry. Bree was not happy, but she knew how serious everyone was about the game. She told him she wasn't okay with it, but he insisted that it was just a game and it wouldn't mean anything. It was worth 4 points for both people who would go into the closet. AJ and Henry stood up and went to find a suitable place, all while Bree freaked out and said she would end things with Henry if he went through with it. It was never completely clear what Henry and Bree were. They don't like to use boyfriend and girlfriend, but everyone knew they were a thing. Aaron tried to call it off, saying this wouldn't be worth it and to just stop, but it was like they didn't even hesitate. Bree sat on the carpet and started to cry as the timer on her phone counted down an agonizing 5 minutes. I thought I would either hear kissing or nothing at all, but instead I heard talking. It started as soft whispers, then crying and yelling. They stayed in for about 2 minutes, then came tumbling out. "That's it, Henry. I can't believe you would do that for a game. We're over," Bree said with a red, wet face. Henry came and silently sat down with AJ. AJ was now beet red as well. Despite 3 of my friends just going through something I couldn't wrap my head around, they all looked at James calmly and nodded for him to pull his card. No one had moved any tokens forward, so it was clear they failed their task of kissing in the closet. James hesitantly leaned in for a card and read it to himself as we were being bombarded by Bree, AJ, and Henry, all saying task completed, and then shot confused faces at each other. They all threw down their cards and moved their tokens forward. Bree's card said break up with Henry, Henry's card said make AJ cry, and AJ's card said tell Henry you love him. All those cards were worth way more than the stupid kissing card, so the kissing task was ignored and they all individually completed their own tasks without ever communicating it with each other. They all saw opportunities to complete a task worth more points and they took it. After this moment, it was like nothing even happened. The girls stopped crying and started laughing and saying how impressive the completion of the tasks were. "Wait, guys, something is wrong here. Do you not see it?" Aaron said with concern, trying to take a break from the game. "Oh, stop, you're just jealous you didn't get to move 6 spaces," Bree said with arrogance. No, I'm not talking about that. Does no one find it weird that the cards are using our names now? Not only that, but the cards are somehow interacting with other cards to almost try and make bad things happen. As he said that, it was like we all froze in our spots, all looking at each other, realizing how hungry and tired we were. Looking around the room, seeing how big of a mess we made, Bree grabbing Henry's hand with a look of sadness and coming to grips with how they hurt each other for a game. I looked down at my arm and was reminded of the crud things I had drawn on my arm with Sharpies in order to move one space in an earlier game. I saw Aaron's jeans that were now cut into shorts with some kid's scissors. I looked at James's legs and saw his one shaved leg lying crossed over the untouched hairy one. I looked at AJ and saw she had a huge purple bruise on her arm. At that moment, I remembered feeling like an addict trying to get off drugs. I knew this game was hurting us. I wanted to stop, but felt like I couldn't. I could see the same feeling in all my friends' eyes, too. The urge to say one more game, just one more time, just to feel the high of this dumb game again. I think we need to take a break from this game, guys. It's getting kind of weird and out of hand, I murmured with the strength that I somehow mustered up. It was like telling an alcoholic you were taking away their beer. They all looked horrified at the idea of not playing the game for even a moment. And just then, James's mom came downstairs and was horrified at what she was looking at. 6 disheveled teenagers all sitting in a circle looking like they had all just been through a war. Not only that, but her whole basement was a mess. James, what the hell happened to your leg? Are you all playing that dumb game again? I can't believe this. Everyone out of my house. James, you are grounded. His mom shouted with rage in her voice. We all ran out of his house, not saying a word to each other, just trying to get home and get some food. As I sat in my kitchen with my long-sleeve sweatshirt covering my now inked-up arm, I tried to eat a sandwich I made myself. I was starving. I could feel and hear my stomach growling, but my need to play the game was so much stronger. So strong I didn't even want to eat. I sat at my dining room table staring at that sandwich for what felt like an eternity, telling myself that I needed to eat and I'd feel better if I did. But somehow the thought of the game was taking up all my energy. I was holding back the urge to text my friends. It took every ounce of self-control I had left. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket and I involuntarily grabbed my phone so fast it was in my hand before I could even think about it. It was James in our group chat. Hey guys, so do you think that was a long enough break? I think I can find where my mom put the game and bring it to that old treehouse back behind Mr. Baker's house. I couldn't hold back anymore. I had to play again. Before I knew it, I was sneaking out of my house trying to remember where the old treehouse was. As I ran through my neighborhood, my phone lit up with text from my friends saying they were on their way. After running around for a while, I found the treehouse. I couldn't believe I had such a hard time finding it, considering how much time a few of us used to spend in it during middle school. I could hear all their voices sounding annoyed as I was the last one to get there. I climbed up the old wooden ladder to find all my friends sitting in a perfect circle, barely able to see the board or each other. It was around this time something strange happened with the game. It wasn't about winning the game necessarily, it was about playing as many games as possible and completing as many tasks as we could. If anyone won a game or finished a task, everyone felt a high, not just the winner. Because of this, players stopped calling each other out for trying to complete secret tasks, so people stopped being so secretive to complete secret tasks. They still kept them a secret because it was a rule of the game, just no one called them out. This made us all more ruthless. I sat down on the hardwood in between Bree and James. Our next game began. AJ drew a card first and it was a secret card. She didn't seem giddy. She looked flush and scared. In fact, it felt like the mood had shifted with everyone. We weren't laughing our butts off anymore. We were terrified to stop playing. It was something in our guts that made us have to play, like a virus growing in us, desperately trying to get out. Next, Aaron drew a card and read it out loud. "Hold your breath for 5 minutes," he whispered, with confusion. "How am I supposed to do that?" he said, trying not to get worried. It's not that the card was all that bad, it's that he knew he would stop at nothing to make it happen. He told us to keep playing the game while he did it and got up a timer on his phone. He took a few deep breaths, then held his nose shut and became extremely focused, not making eye contact with anybody. Next, it was James' turn. He had a secret card and didn't show much emotion towards it. Next, Bree nervously took a card and yet again it was a secret card. In fact, we all drew a secret card until it was Aaron's turn again. It had been about 45 seconds and he was really focusing, and we didn't want to make him draw a card while trying to finish his task. As we sat and watched our friend become more and more red from holding his breath, we found ourselves in complete silence. Other than the wind weaving its way through the trees outside and the soft sound of crickets in the distance, we all just stared at each other, terrified of what was on those secret cards. I knew I had to use every little bit of self-control I had left in my body to not try and complete the task on my card. I was betting that's why everyone was being so quiet. They all had tasks they didn't want to do, but all had the uncontrollable urge to do it. My card said that I needed to remove one of James's fingers by any means necessary. It was worth 10 points. I couldn't believe I wanted to complete it so badly, but I was frozen figuring out how to do it. As I stared at him, I noticed Hugh was looking over at Bree. I figured that his card had something to do with her. It seemed like everyone was fixated on someone else. I glanced down at the timer Aaron had, and I was amazed to see he'd been holding his breath for almost 2 minutes. Just as I was about to comment on it, chaos broke loose, everyone jumping to someone else, making it a big pile of people viciously grabbing each other. I didn't read their cards myself, but it was clear by their actions what their tasks were. Of course, as you know, I was going for James's fingers, but James was ripping at Bree's hair. Bree was pulling Henry's hair out, Henry was tearing at AJ's neck, and AJ was trying to open my mouth to get my tongue. For a solid 30 seconds, we were all attaching each other when Aaron passed out from holding his breath. This seemed to snap us out of our trance for a bit. We ran over to our friend and checked his pulse. After we realized he was still breathing, we got lost in the game again and all jumped on each other to keep brutalizing one another. Just as I got my teeth around James's pinky finger, we saw a bright flashlight going through the cracks in the treehouse and froze. A police officer popped his head through the bottom entrance to the treehouse and looked at us in horror. He saw Aaron out cold in the corner alone with the rest of us in a pile of blood and ripped out hair. The officer grabbed us one by one and practically threw us to the ground, where another officer put us each in handcuffs. We had hours and hours of questioning that night, but we were all released by sunrise. No one was badly injured, just a lot of cuts, bruises, and a few patches of hair missing. Even Aaron was okay. Honestly, Aaron made it out in the best shape. We all got grounded for the rest of the summer. All the parents agreed that we needed to stop spending time together because they insisted on us having some beef between us all. None of us mentioned the board game was at the treehouse that night because we didn't want them to take it away from us. We knew we had to play it again. However, they caught on to it and banned us from ever playing it again. We spent the next 3 weeks of summer miserable. Each one of us tried to fill the hunger to play the game by playing some other board games or attempting to remake it, but it wasn't the same. It was the night before school started and I got a message from James through Skype. Our parents banned us from talking to each other, but it seemed my parents and James's parents forgot about Skype. He told me I had to come over right now. I managed to hop out my window and ran for James's house. I got to his house in what felt like record time and jumped down the fire escape to the basement. There I saw the rest of my friends all sitting by the fireplace, weeping. As I got closer, I saw they were covered in ash. I saw tiny little bits of what was left of the game lying out on the ground. She burned it. My mom burned it, James said in between tears. Everyone was desperately trying to find any pieces that were left of our precious game. Some of them rubbed the ashes of the game on their faces and arms to try and feel something again. As I watched them, I saw something in the corner of my eye. I looked over to our normal hangout area and saw it. I saw the board game sitting out. Not just the box, but the whole game was out and ready to play. Are you sure that your mom burnt it, James? I said as my eyes got glazed over looking at the beautiful board game sitting out for us to enjoy. Yes, I'm sure. She did it right in front of me so I'd stop looking for it. Just as James finished his sentence, he looked at me and then at my eye line. He saw the game. The next week of our lives was a whirlwind. After James's mom burned the game and it reappeared, we all ran away with the game. We stole a car from AJ's mom after we got a task card for it and left town. We would play the game in the car, in random fast food restaurants, and sometimes in parks. It's all we did all day. We would fall asleep playing the game and only manage to eat maybe a bag of chips or something small during the day. We kept moving because we didn't want to be found. And that week, we all managed to lose our jobs and all missed the first week of our senior year of high school. All because we were addicted to a board game. I still remember the last game we ever played. It was a late Sunday night. We were actually in our town, sitting in an old barn near the treehouse we sat in before, all because the board game told us to. Up to that point, we were hanging out far away from home. We didn't want to be so close. We knew we could be found easily by our families and the authorities if we were too close, but we had no choice. We were slaves to the game. At this point, we were in bad shape. With every new game started, we broke down a little bit more. We surrounded the board with tired eyes and growling stomachs, missing teeth and bruised bodies, concussed heads, and broken toes. Please, we have to stop. I can't do this anymore. I want to go home, Bree said as we were about to start our next game. I can't imagine not playing this game. It's all I ever want to do. I think I might die if I couldn't play it. I know the game hurts us, but it would hurt so much more if we stopped playing it, Henry said with a gravelly voice. Guys, why are we talking? We have to play again, Aaron said while trying not to cough. I know we have to. I've never hated something and loved something so much in my whole life, Bree remarked. We started the game with shaky hands, moving slowly and holding our breath whenever someone looked at their card. AJ went first. She reached down and picked a card, cringing to herself after reading it in her head. Next was Bree. She rolled her eyes and she read off the words. Public card. Waterboard the player to your right for 5 minutes. Both players move 8 spaces, Bree timidly said as she glanced at James sitting next to her. I can't say we really knew how to waterboard someone, but we laid him on his back with his legs elevated and dripped water over him. We let him take a card for his turn before Bree started the waterboarding, so we didn't have to wait for 5 minutes for them to be done. His card was a secret card. We continued the game with the awful background sounds of gagging and choking. Next was Aaron's turn. He read his card and winced. He closed his eyes tight and opened them again, as if he was hoping he was in a dream. As he opened his eyes, he slowly looked at all of us, making eye contact with each of us. Just then, James was done being waterboarded and he and Bree came to join us. I was so glad they were done. Not just because I was sick of the sounds, but because it meant they got to move 8 spaces. Aaron stood to his feet slowly. I prepared myself because I figured he was about to hurt us. In an instant, he ran out of the barn and into our stolen car. We all looked around confused as to where he went, but kept playing the game as he drove off. Next, it was my turn. Public card. Jump off the roof of the barn. 9 points, I said out loud, nervously. Henry and AJ jumped up and started to walk outside, not even questioning if I would do it or not. They weren't wrong in the assumption. Before I could even think, I was on my feet trying to find a way up to the roof. I found my way to the top of the 10-foot building. I took a deep breath and leaped off and was met with a hard thump as I hit the ground. I felt a gut-wrenching pain in my right ankle as I landed. I knew I broke it. I had no doubt in my mind. I was thrashing in pain, grabbing my ankle as my friends dragged me back into the barn. We knew we had to keep playing. Next, Henry took a card. He picked it from a pile with his eyes closed and brought it to his face while peeking just enough to see the words on the card. Then closed his eyes again, trying to pretend he never read the words in the first place. Next, AJ took a card. Even though it was a secret card, I knew it was about me. She glanced down at my ankle right after her eyes left the card. Just as James was reaching for his card, we saw Aaron walk back into the barn. We all sat in shock as his silhouette became clear and vivid in the doorway. Blood trickled down his arms and hands, dripping on the dirt as we all stared at each other. His eyes were blank at first, but then turned to pain. We watched him as he walked from the doorway to the game board, blood dripping on the game as he moved his token 30 spaces. Aaron, what have you done? 30 spaces? AJ muttered in fear. James, I'm so sorry. I had to. Aaron whimpered as he sat in the dirt with his secret task card crinkled in his bloody fist. Tell me what you did right now. What the hell does your card say? Show us, James yelled as he stood to his feet. Just as James was about to jump onto Aaron, Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out some matches we used to start small campfires while we had been on the run. We all stood still, waiting to see what he was about to do as he lit 3 matches and threw them into the nearby hay bales, igniting the whole inside of the barn. Without hesitation, AJ saw the opportunity and stomped on my ankle as hard as she could. If it wasn't broken before, it sure was now. I looked down at it to see it now bent sideways. She then stomped on my other ankle, not breaking it, but making it so I couldn't walk. She moved her token 12 spaces. Even though I was in agony from the pain, I still felt such an intense high from her moving so many spaces. Aaron dropped his card in the midst of everything happening. James fell to his feet to see the card and started to weep as he read it out loud. Secret card. Kill James's mom. Move 30 spaces, he said with anger bubbling up. I can't believe you would do that for a dumb game. How could you do this to me? I couldn't control myself. Come on, you know what I mean. I couldn't control myself. Don't do anything that you're gonna regret, Aaron said cautiously. Oh, I think it's a little too late for not doing things we regret, James said as he jumped onto Aaron, choking him with all his strength. It seemed at that moment he was able to break free from the control of the game. He wasn't feeling the high of someone else completing a task. He just felt hate. Red, hot hate. I was overwhelmed, to say the least. The barn was in flames. James was trying to kill Aaron, and to make matters worse, AJ out of nowhere jumped up and dug a pocket knife into Bree's stomach. Now Bree and AJ were in a fighting match too. Henry and I sat across from each other in disbelief at our surroundings. He looked at me with death in his eyes as he reached for a card. It wasn't even his turn, but I don't think he cared anymore. He knew the others would be occupied for a while. The fire was getting bad. I knew I had to get out of that barn as soon as I could. Because of the damage done to my ankles, I couldn't walk, so I dragged my body out of the barn, taking the game with me. I made it a few feet and looked back to see Henry not moving. He set his card down on the board before I started to drag it with me, and I read it as I continued to crawl. Secret card. Let the fire overtake you. Move your token to the finish line and win the game. I was able to get out of the barn with the board game in hand. I sat and watched as the flames overtook Henry. He didn't even flinch when he caught on fire. As I saw it happen, I moved his token to the end space so we could win the game. I felt an intense high overtake my body as the game was complete. Only a few moments after Henry caught fire, the whole barn came down, with all my friends in it. I looked at the burning barn and then back down to the game. I'm ashamed to say that my biggest worry was not knowing who I'd play with now. I hate myself for that, but that's how all the game is. I tried to start a new game by myself and drew a card, but that's when I saw the sirens of police cars and fire trucks pull up next to me. I was immediately surrounded by people trying to give me medical attention, taking me away from my game. I scratched and threw my body around like a toddler not getting their way. I remember them giving me some kind of sedative and waking up in the hospital. I was the only person to make it out alive that night. All I could say to the doctors and my parents was that I needed the game, that I had to play the game. It was the only meaning to life. It was the only reason I had to live. My parents got me a great lawyer, and I got out of everything by pleading insanity. Our families all knew the right people and had the right money to ensure the word never got out about the deaths. They even managed to make the death of James's mom disappear. When they told me my friends were all dead, I didn't have much of a reaction. I just kept asking where the game was. When they eventually told me the game was gone and never coming back, that's when I lost it. They had to put me in restraints because I kept hurting the hospital staff for my meltdowns. I started to threaten the staff and told them all the horrible things that would happen to them if they didn't get that game back to me. I eventually ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I yelled and screamed so much that I never had my voice. I hardly ever slept because all I thought about was the game and how I craved to play it again. My skin was red and torn up from my insistent picking due to the withdrawals. After months, I felt numb. Maybe from all the drugs they pumped me up with, or perhaps I was so used to withdrawals that I didn't feel it as much. It still felt like I had an uncontrollable urge inside my bones, but I was able to hide it. They then sent me home after a while. I knew I had to mask my emotions for the game, pretend I didn't care anymore, even if it killed me inside to say it out loud. I walked into the bedroom and I felt like I was being treated like a baby. My old bed frame was gone and it was just the mattress on the floor. All my sharp shelves were taken down along with anything else I could possibly hurt myself with. I rolled my eyes, but knew my parents had to make these changes for me to even come home. I sat on my bed and I looked around in my room, now with a doorknob that locked from the outside to keep me in, as well as bars on my windows. I searched my room desperately to find something to take up my mind. That's when I dug through my closet and I saw it. I saw that beautiful, colorful box that I came to know so well, just hiding in the back of my closet, waiting to be found. I knew it came back the first time it was destroyed, but it was feeling like a one-time thing, but here it was, patiently waiting for me to come and play it. I ripped open the box, giving myself a paper cut in the process, and started to play the game by myself. With all that being said, I can finally say task completed and share what my first card said in that solo game. Secret card. Spread the word about this game online so more people can join us. Move 20 spaces. So, what do you say? Care to join me for a game?